Welcome to Career Practitioner Conversations. This podcast is presented by the National Career Development Association. Hello and welcome to the NCDA podcast. I'm Melissa Venable, NCDA Director of Professional Development, and today's episode features a conversation about how to transform your workshop and class presentations by discarding PowerPoint. I am personally excited to hear more about this and equally excited to introduce Allie Remm and Jody Burum. Allie is a career and employment services specialist at Central Community College in Grand Island, Nebraska. And Jody is a senior career counselor at the Fresno State Career Development Center in California. They met in Atlanta at the NCDA conference, and their connection has continued. Really looking forward to this topic. Allie and Jody, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, Jody, first of all, I'm so glad I got to meet you over the summer and go to your roundtable and learn about your basically going into the classroom, no PowerPoint. And it's been interesting, but I want to ask you a few questions so everybody else can get to know you a little bit. So how long have you been in a career services role?
Basically, I've been in student services for 25 years, so quite a long time. But throughout my entire career, I've been doing some type of either career counseling courses, teaching at a community college, or as a career counselor, or that was my main focus when I was at a community college. A lot of things have changed during this transition of 25 years, but I like where it's going.
25 years, that's a lot of experience.
It's a lot.
What inspired you to move away from the PowerPoint? What was that pivotal moment that led to that decision?
The very first thing is when I started looking at the classes that I was doing, there was a disconnect, a huge disconnect. And I couldn't figure out why there was this disconnect. I was following the status quo. Everybody wants to just, okay, let's create this slide deck and put as much as we can information in there and just think that by presenting it, they're going to remember it. And I actually went to a PDI training back in 2016 for NCDA when it was in Chicago, and it was a brain-based counseling. So during that PDI, they really talked about what that meant on the one-on-one counseling side and how students really understand on that memory base and how their working memory works. And when they start looking at the working memory, it's 5 to 9 items that they can remember. And then when I was thinking there's this huge disconnect, I'm looking at my slide deck of 40 slides, and I'm going, there's a huge disconnect because I have a lot more topics than just 5 to 9. And so I needed to take a step back and think, how can I recreate something that would be very simple for me to do, but also that was going to be more impactful for the students to learn. And when I started doing this, the number one problem was just the information overload. So I needed to disconnect from the outcome because there was a disconnect within the outcome. The faculty was assigning assignments, and I would go in, for example, they would assign like resumes. I would go in, I would present on resumes, and then they would turn in their resumes to me. And I'm like, were they even there and listening to anything that I was saying? And so I actually asked one of the students why. When they sat face to face with me, I was like, were you there? What did you remember? And she basically said that presentations in classrooms are side notes to her. And a lot of students feel it's a side note. And what that meant, because I even asked, what is a side note? They're not there to learn it, but to put it as a bookmark, to pull from it later on. And there's still this, you're giving them so much information that bookmark is very small and you don't know what they walked away with. They may walk away with, well, this is what the content or my contact information should be like, or for sure, don't put references available upon request at the bottom. And that's what they learn, because that was what they learned at the beginning and at the end, that was their working memory. Everything in between just kind of dissipated. And so I really needed to find a way. So that's why I went forward and I created this type of new handout that took away all the slide decks.
So you're gathering information from the students. You recognize, okay, there's a disconnect. As you were coming up with basically the notes, the outline that I received at the conference, what approaches or methods did you try? what was successful and what wasn't as you came up with this outline?
The biggest thing that I really wanted to do is I was spending a lot of time just tweaking the presentations from class to class. And so I wanted to get away from that. Anytime that you go into a presentation to tweak it for another major, there's always some things that you forget. And then you're in the middle of the presentation. So then immediately you kind of lost the students because now you're talking about a totally different major than what they are. For example, I could be with sociology and all of a sudden engineering is popping up and that has nothing to do with them. And so I needed to find a way that was very flexible and something that really focused on what the students wanted to know. And that was the scary part is, should I just strip away the 100% of the presentation? At first, I was like, no. Instead of what I really focused on was, I'm going to make my presentations only 20 slides, that's it. And I'm going to start adding polls, as many of us do. And so I added the polls to it. It didn't change anything. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to add activities instead of polls so I could reiterate what they're learning. But what happened with that is when they broke out, either they were bored, they weren't following on topic, or it just died off. Or they really liked the activity and I was running too long and I couldn't get back to my slide deck. So I had to find that happy medium.
That that's a lot, and I feel like I've been practicing your outline
Hmm.
now for a couple of months, and I'm learning the same things.
Yep.
So, someone like me who might be interested in trying your idea, implementing it into the workshops, into the classroom, please describe your current model. What works?
So what really works is I created this handout, which everyone will have access to. And basically it's 4 columns. And on the very first column, it says what. The what component is what do I want them to know for sure. It could also be what the instructor has required me to tell them during that time. And so that was where the what was about. And then there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there's 3 columns, and that's where your working columns are of what you're really going to be talking to them about. And it flows with what how typical conversations go because we're going away from presenting to having a conversation. A conversation naturally will limit what you're going to be talking about because you're going to ask them at the beginning. So what exactly, let's just focus on resumes. What exactly worries you about a resume? What do you want to know about a resume? And things will come up. And at the beginning, I was thinking, this is not going to work with my population here, especially at Fresno State. We're very diverse. We have a lot, over 50% is first generation. And so I'm looking at this going, are they even going to be, is someone going to be brave enough to actually say what is the problem and where they're worried about? And that was a worry, but it didn't really come to tuition because ultimately what happened is there's always those extroverts that love to speak aloud and they will just add in and people go, oh, me too. Oh, me too. And so everybody started getting that buy-in. And a lot of times I was just put under that. So when you walk into the classroom, you're literally walking in with just this handout, some markers, some dry erase markers, and an eraser so you can leave the dry erase board as you found it. And the very first thing I do is I put 2 lines and a top line and two other lines to create the 3 columns. And then I put what over in the corner. And I ask them, this is our topic. What do you want to know about it? And I let them know this from the beginning. So when they're coming in, filing in, they're sitting down, they're reading what I'm writing. And it just says, what do you want to know about resumes? What worries you? Question mark. And so they're already coming up with different things before I even start the class. And it works really well because of the 3 columns. We're only focusing on 3 areas of their working memory. So it's really based on the brain-based counseling. But at the end of each one, you'll see a little section of activity. And that activity is so important because it's reiterating what they're learning. And at the beginning, that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had was creating something that was a 5, 7 minute activity. Now with ChatGPT, it's not that big of a worry anymore because now I can say, create a 5 minute thing regarding XYZ, and it just gives me as many things as I want, and I could pick and choose and keep changing things up. And so even if you go into another classroom with the same people, by changing those activities, you're just reiterating a new way of thinking about the same thing.
That is That's exciting. And I'm thinking of, okay, editing those PowerPoints, the time it takes, the energy it takes. How long does it take you to prep now with this outline?
About 6 minutes,
That's what I
because
thought.
it's about 6 minutes max, because I go in and I have some just ready set up ones. Like, these are the main things I want someone to know about an interview, a resume. And I did this beforehand. And then I just look at my email that the instructor wants, and I see if they want anything very specific. And then I just add that to it. And then I usually have a list of activities that I could pull from. Now it's ChatGPT, and I could pull that up within seconds. And I could go, "Ooh, I like this one." I add it, and then I just go to class. And a lot of the things that I do, I try not to have items for them um, to have to utilize. So it's more like group work or individual work. And I purposely do not bring my laptop when I go to my presentations. If I want them to look at something, I ask them to pull their phones out, or they have their laptop. And if you don't, join up with somebody who does. And so I'm making them find our website, find our career success guide, reviewing, the beginning and the end of what a good resume is. Well, look at all of our resumes on our career success guide and find what makes them different, what are the same, and let's talk about it. So now I'm making them do the work instead of me just telling them.
That's what we want. We want
Yes.
students to do the work. And then that helps their memory as well because they're actually going to that website. They're looking at those resources. And I'm sure we all feel this way. Time is important. So being able to come up with a plan in 6 minutes, that's huge. And I'm sure the more you've done this, the more confident you've become. So you could
Yeah.
probably do it in less than 6 minutes because you're like, okay, let's go. I've done this before.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's a repeat, I always call it a repeat customer, but it's a repeat faculty member. So I just grab that because I know this is what they want. And so I never throw away my little handouts that I have. I just put them in a file. And sometimes I write the faculty name on it, or the class that I went to with it. And I could just keep moving forward on it. And it makes it really easy that way, because I'm not at the last minute stressed out trying to get across campus because I was at the last minute adding my little additions. And when we look at our slide deck, a lot of times what we really worry about is our beginning, is the buffers. So it's the beginning, our services, our introduction, who we are, and then everything we want to tell them at the end, where we're located at, our social media. And we're looking at 5 to 10 slides at the beginning and the end if we add them all up. And that's what they're remembering instead of the content that you really want them to know.
That's a good segue to the next thought I had was you were collecting feedback from students, made the change. What are you seeing now from students? What are they sharing with you? What are those positive changes?
Just in the class alone, there's more interaction. At the end of, and I'm sure everybody's experienced this, where the instructor goes, "Okay, now say thank you to everybody for them to present," and they're all clapping to you like, "Yay!" And you're looking at their faces, and their body language is saying everything but yay too. Instead, it's just like, "Oh, thank God it's over," type of thing. And so that's where you no longer have that. Instead, it's more genuine. They're actually involved. They're walking away with the tools. And I'm also seeing it from the results. So if there is that class assignment and it's coming through, I'm seeing what they learned being applied, instead of where's this disconnect. There's no longer a disconnect. Instead, they know where to find the information. They know where to tweak it a little bit, because I showed them along the way, but I made them find the information. It wasn't just, okay, take a picture. And we've all been there. We're taking pictures of the slides over and over. And do we ever look at those pictures? Very rarely.
Never.
And this way I'm giving them the tools to be more successful.
Okay, so moving forward, you can think of me or someone new listening
Yeah.
to this podcast. What advice would you give for someone thinking about discarding the PowerPoint?
Just try it out. A lot of times there's this fear. When I was doing the roundtable at NCDA, a lot of people came up to me afterwards, and I've received a lot of emails afterwards of people who attended saying, "I'm really worried about this. Can I do like a half and half at the beginning?" And I'm like, it's better just to go full blown, just try it out, and you will find out how freeing it is by not having that restriction. Because the biggest thing is and I keep saying we've all been there because I have several years of experience doing this, but I've seen it in the presentations I've presented and also that I've sat in on, where you run out of time, and so you have 10 more slides and the kids are like done in 30 seconds. And you're just like, okay, let me just switch to the end real quick so you know where we're located at. Or you start talking very fast. And that keeps that all from happening because it's actually a true conversation. And it is very empowering by not having that crutch of, I need to have my PowerPoint slides. You know those up and down. I've even been the one that when I was trying to transition, I put more pictures and less words. I mean, I still have some faculty that will say, oh, yes, I want a presentation. I go, well, can I have a career conversation? No, I want a presentation. And most of my presentations are now like a picture. Like I have a wheat field with one butterfly on it that basically says, what is a resume? And so I'm trying to get them to talk along the way. And even at the round table, someone goes, I really hate those slides when someone just has a picture. And I'm like, I've tried it. And I still use it because I don't want to be that talking head of just repeating what's on the PowerPoint. And so I would say just try it. It's very scary at the beginning. The first time I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. And at that time we had physical career success guide. So I brought the physical career success guide so I could make them go through it. And I found out, wow, this actually worked. And it was so empowering. I walked away and I'm like, yes, this is the best experience I've ever had. And I felt so empowered. And the students were very like, wow, this is really good because it was different than what they normally get, even from their own faculty members and their own instructors. It's a little bit different because now they're leading the conversation.
Yeah, I went to your round table. I don't remember what day it was, but then the following week, so I think within days of going to your round table, I decided I wanted to try it. So I had a presentation with some pharmacy tech students that following Tuesday. So again, like 4 or 5 days after. And I have to admit, I had a few slides, but I came in with the expectation I'm not depending on the PowerPoint. I want this to be organic. I know I want to cover these topics with the students, and it went so well. I was nervous because that PowerPoint has been my security blanket.
Yep.
And I had it all ready, of course, but then I pretty much scrapped it and I had what you said, like a couple pictures, and I think I had a poll or something. So I did what you had said. But even the associate dean who came for that program said, she was like, you're in your element. Without having that PowerPoint, without feeling like, oh, you need to follow that. We didn't cover this topic. We need to go back or we need to move forward. She said, I could tell it was more natural. The students were comfortable with you. And I had that time done something I'd never done before. It was a smaller group, so it was possible with this group. But I had brought a notebook and I wrote down all of their names. And then I asked an icebreaker and I wrote down all that information. So if they ever reached back out to me, I would have those connections. And that felt like it really opened the conversation to begin with. I think there was maybe not even 10 students. So it was very possible. And then I did it again. This was a much bigger group. So I did have the PowerPoint just as a guide. There was 54 students, but I primarily focused on hands-on active participation. And I had them do conversations with each other since we just couldn't with 50 students. And I heard from that program director that was one of the best presentations. And it was with our Scott Scholars on another location. So it went so well. And it's so freeing, like you said. You just come in. We know the information as career services people. We know the information, but we allowing the students to lead what they want to know, questions that they have, has been really huge. And then I did it again. No PowerPoint, none at all.
Yay.
Nothing. I came with a couple handouts and my little notebook to write down information. I did that with our trio class. There was two sections. It was awesome. And our trio students, they're either first generation, they might have financial aid, and then also disability. So it could be one of those areas. I don't necessarily need to know that. I don't ask that. But I could tell like this is new. College is new for them. It's also nerve-wracking. They have their own challenges. And being able to just open it up to them with really, I knew I wanted to talk about resumes. I knew I wanted to talk about our services, but letting them guide the conversation. They were like, you need to come back.
Yeah.
We need more of this. We need more workshops. And I was like, okay, let me ask the instructor and I'll see if I can come back. Because they were like, I want another one on interviewing. I want another one where we really dive into the resume writing. And that was huge to hear that
Mhm.
from them. And the one was a live distance. So I had students in person and then from a different location. Still no PowerPoint.
Yeah.
No PowerPoint. And it was great. It was, yes. The only thing is, I like to collect feedback afterwards.
Mhm.
And so I usually put the QR code on the screen. So I didn't have that. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out like a way to do that. Or maybe that's the only one I bring so that they can scan it at the, I don't know. I got to figure that out. But it's been a journey and everything you said, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. She's calling me out because sometimes I still bring that PowerPoint.
Mhm. And that's the thing. A lot of times, the reason that students really enjoy it and they walk away with a positive outlook on career is because they were listened to, their concerns were addressed instead of just being talked to as a journal, because that's what a PowerPoint is. We generalize everything. And we're just saying, this is what I see the most of, this is the errors I see the most of. And so we're generalizing everything that we're giving them, and it may or may not even apply to them. And even walking into it, interviewing one, sometimes I don't even do the full three, beginning, middle, and end. Instead, I bring a balloon. I have a beach ball that has just interviewing questions on it. And I walk in, I put the ball down, and I ask them, what areas are you most fearful about? And we address those. But the number one is how to answer questions. So then I'm like, all right, we're going to do that at the end. And for the last 20, 30 minutes, we will toss around this ball, and everybody who wherever their thumbs are, they could choose that answer. And they're answering almost like in a panel because they're answering in front of the class. And it works really well because by the time they finish and they walk away, they're like, answering questions aren't too bad because they got that fear out of them. And so there's different ways of approaching this, but not having that generalized PowerPoint is so much better for the students. The students are really feeling like you're there for them and you're concerned about what they're concerned about.
Mm, absolutely. I've noticed that in getting past my own, like, oh, I need that PowerPoint, I need to bring my laptop. It's been a challenge and I feel like, okay, it's been like 2 months. So I feel like I'm okay. I'm growing. I'm in the growing pains stage, but
Yeah.
I love the idea of the beach ball. I'm going to have to do that. I have interviewed Jenga, but I think the beach ball would be fun with a bigger group.
Yeah.
Maybe I need a couple of beach balls if I have 55 students and we could split up the room. And that kind of breaks the ice too, right? You drop the ball, whatever, pick it back up and wherever your thumb lands.
Yeah, and that's it. And like you said, some of the people were online. And so when I was doing this, I was in full force. I hadn't even done like a traditional presentation for at least 2 solid years. And then COVID hit and everything went online. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because I have to go back to an actual presentation. And so I did one traditional presentation and I was like, oh my gosh, I could see all the students. They were turning it off when they're only the top of their heads are showing, so I can't even see their faces. And I'm just like, I am not really addressing anything to them. They're just bored, but they're really craving that interaction because they're isolated now. So I had to think about ways that I could do this. So I just contacted them before the event, before their class. I got on the roster. I sent them all an email, and I said, for my presentation, I actually will have a conversation with you. So please email me the concerns and questions you have regarding this topic. And then I would combine them all together. And then at the end, when I actually was presenting, I was just talking to them and I was answering those questions and I was having them. I tried to do breakout rooms, but it's kind of odd to do breakout rooms. But instead, I try to find just ways that I sent them information prior so they could do those activities. And so I was still able to do the activities with them. I was still able to answer their questions. And instead of having them like laying down in their bed and whatnot, because this was COVID, they were actually like interacting. I could see that they were writing. And so they were taking notes. And I was like, this is what they're craving. They're still wanting that true connection. So it does transition.
Yeah, but I think that was, I don't know if it was one of my questions or if someone asked that question during the roundtable, but it was like, okay, I can see how the outline works for that in person. I can see
Mhm.
that. But then it's okay, the live distance where you have in person or remote students joining in or completely remote. And so it's for me, and I'm sure you have so much experience in this, does this method fit all types of classroom settings and audiences?
It really does. It could be a freshman group, it could be a graduate level group, and it fits. So it fits all the classmen. And it also fits online, in person, even that dual. Usually, if it's a dual where I'm in class and the instructor says, oh, well, we have three people and they're online, I ask her, I said, oh, is there a way, or him, I go, is there a way that you could monitor any of their questions so you could pose those to me so they could be part of it? And that has worked really well. So even though they are remote, they're still able to ask questions, and I'm not just ignoring them because it's very hard to talk to an entire classroom while monitoring the Q&A.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I don't know where the camera is.
I never know
So,
where the camera is ever. And so I'm always just like, direct it towards the board. So if I'm around the board, then they could see me and they could also see what I'm writing. And so I try to be very good at that. But it is very difficult when it is both in person and remote. I prefer either all remote or all in person personally, but
oh,
we
sure.
don't get to choose.
Unfortunately, no, I don't even think the
No,
instructors probably get to choose either.
no, not at all. So, in your own experience, how do you see moving forward? Do you see slowly, surely just removing all of your PowerPoints, or are you just still going to do this blended?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about that. I would really like to move to no PowerPoint at all. I really enjoyed that with the trio students. It felt like a natural conversation, and I brought a few handouts with me so they could have it. Not like a ton. I think there was a Resume 101 handout and then a blank resume template that I brought, and maybe like a searching for jobs. But I also love the challenge mindset that JP shared with us. So I went to one of his PDIs and I like the idea of having that on the screen, but I think I could actually just bring the cards with me too. So in person that I don't
Yeah,
need them. I'm still wrapping my head around. I know I have a speech class coming up in October and there are students from multiple locations, including in person. So I'm trying to wrap my head around how could I do that without a PowerPoint? I think the instructor would be flexible with it, but she does like the PowerPoint that we currently have. So I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate those relationships and build the trust some more with the students and the faculty. But ultimately, it's been so freeing. And especially
yeah.
the time, like you said, updating those PowerPoints to match the audience. That's so difficult. And then we lose them anyways.
Exactly. And I've had some instructors exactly like that where they're like, I really want that PowerPoint. And what I've done is I've changed the PowerPoints to be very wordy. So I'm not focusing on the PowerPoint. I just share it with the entire class and say, you do have a PowerPoint that covers a little bit more in detail, but today we're really focusing on what you're worrying about and the questions that you have. But that's just like a handout now. And so I'm using it as a handout. So that instructor is still very happy that they're getting that PowerPoint. And I can still do what I feel is most important is answering those students' questions directly.
That's good to know. I'm gonna take that advice. I'll talk to the instructor, of course, first and just make sure that works for her expectations. But if I could cut it down even, because like I think you had asked during the roundtable, how many slides on average do you
Yeah,
have? And we were like, a lot. We're almost a little embarrassed to share how many. It's like
yeah,
just cutting that down even could just make a huge impact. And I keep thinking about what you said about the brain remembers 3 to 5 pieces, and we have an hour and a half with these students. What do we want them to remember?
Yeah, because the 5 to 9, and brain-based counseling is 5 to 9 items, but our students have so many other priorities and so many other, I mean, they have lives going on. And so you have to just chop that off at least into half. And so that's why I always say 3 to 4, that's it, because everything else is their grocery list, figuring out their life, their job and things like that. So really focusing on, okay, if I put all my effort into 3 good areas and reiterate that, they're going to walk away with a lot more skills than me just being a talking head showing a PowerPoint in front of them. And that's where I was going into after years and years, because if you think about this, I've been in this field since 2000. I started working in it. And so at 2017, I had been doing it for quite a long time, just using those PowerPoints. And I get to the point where I'm now jaded towards the PowerPoint. So when an instructor goes, I really want you to use a PowerPoint, I'm like, oh, okay. And then like you said, I condense it down so much, because when we look at those PowerPoints, and at the roundtable, I did ask, what percentage do you think is most important of those PowerPoints? And everyone's like, all of it. It's like, there's no way, because we have those buffers where we're like, well, they need to know our services, because they may never hear from us again. They need to know where we're located at. They need to know everything that you put online will live there forever. Or they need to know if there's career liaisons. They need to know it, but are they going to remember it? That's the key point. And that's where this changes the thought process of presenting to students. Is we're not focusing on what we think they need to know. Instead, we're focusing it on what they want to know, and then giving them the resources to find that information.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think moving forward, I really want to move more into what do they want to know? So I
Yeah.
think I've been going in also with this preconception. Well, these are things that I notice that generally students struggle with. I need to maybe move away from that even more and just go in and open it up. What do you want to know? What questions do you have? What do you struggle with? And just kind of more of a conversation, like you said, and then adding some workshop ideas in.
Yeah, exactly. Because even when, resume seems to be like the number one thing that we present on all the time.
Yes.
But what I was finding when I was doing typical presentations is I'd go in one class and I'd go in another class, and I'm like, you are the same people I was just talking to, like more than 50%, because one instructor is out and you're covering all 3 of their classes for that day. And now you're like, but I have this presentation that they just heard. How am I going to pivot? And even if you just start getting to do this, then you're able to pivot in those situations where you can still cover information, but not be dependent on that PowerPoint. So it is a good skill to learn for just in those cases alone. If you're not like 100% like, I don't want to just buy into this, and that's fine. But once you start doing it, like you said, now you're like, how can I get rid of my PowerPoints? It does become very addicting of how can I change things up a little bit more? And it's very free.
I hadn't even thought about, like you said, the same students being
Mhm.
in. I I hadn't thought about that. You're absolutely right, though. That could definitely happen. And then that allows you even more freedom. So you're not going in with the PowerPoint looking at several students who've already received the same information.
Yep.
You can pivot a lot faster. Okay, actually, this is what we're going to do. Or we're going to,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to hear from you. And the students that already talked to me, let's hear more from you. I hadn't even thought about. I've thought about that. I help admissions with tours and just making sure every year we're doing something different. But I hadn't thought about, oh, yeah, that's a possibility. It's a very real possibility.
Yeah. And like for us here at Fresno State, we are liaisons to different colleges. And so the chances of seeing the exact same students over and over is great. And for me personally, I oversee like the education, which is all graduate students. So a lot of the faculty there are very into having career development into their classrooms. And I see the exact same cohort over and over. And I'm like, I need to change this up because when I was using a presentation, it became brutal because I'm like, so you already know this, and I'm still dependent upon that presentation. Now I could walk in and I'm like, okay, so the instructor really wants us to focus on this, but is there other topic areas that you're kind of curious about, or do you want to focus on this? And the instructors have gotten to know me to know that I'm just going to pivot because I can look at the class and go, yeah, you've all had an assignment in another class because it's the same cohort. And so it becomes a real problem, especially at larger universities where you do have that liaison model.
It goes back to the mindset for us as career services people. This might be the only time they see us. It might not be, actually.
Yeah.
You build that rapport with the faculty in the program areas, you might see these students several times. And like the trio class was practically begging me to come back. Wait,
Yeah.
no, we want more. We want more workshops.
Exactly. And so that's where I think the most important part of career development is really making those connections throughout campus, finding those career champions, focusing on that. So when you do all those various presentations, you do have that flexibility where you could have this more conversation based presentation instead of just a formal 50 slide deck going through as fast as you can because you're like, okay, well, I have 50 minutes. I have a minute per slide. That's easy. And then the instructor goes, okay, well, I just have to do this quick little blurb to them at the beginning, and that takes 10 minutes. So now you're doing 50 slides in 40 minutes. And of course, you're rushing, and the students feel rushed because they sense that, and they're not really gaining anything from it.
Right. And I'm thinking back to the facilitating career development training that I did last year, and there's different styles of learning. And truly, how many of us really like to be lectured at with a PowerPoint for 50 minutes?
No one. I'm a visual learner, and so that's why I use the board because otherwise I could have left it where it was just a true conversation. But because I'm a visual learner, I do write things down. And sometimes students will give you like this curveball, and you're like, that's a great parking lot question. So, what I want you to do, I want you to send me an email regarding that. And so you're not going to go off topic. Because there are those students that will just throw you curveballs occasionally, and you just run with it and just say, that's a parking lot question. If we have time at the end, we'll address that. But if we don't, send me an email. And it makes life a little easier. So you're not worried about the what ifs.
Yeah, I really loved it. I am so glad I went to your roundtable and I got to meet
Yeah.
you. And I'm so glad you're so flexible because I think I saw you in person. I was like, hey, I think we should do a podcast together.
Yeah, I
Surprise.
remember that. I'm like, oh, sure. That sounds great. And the
So
biggest thing is I've been wanting to share this with people because I was going to present it back in 2020 before the world ended. And so I was going to present it, and then I just put it on the back burner again. I was still utilizing it, but I was like, I really want to share this with people because it is so freeing. And we spend a lot of time preparing presentations, walking to the presentations, being at the presentations. That takes a big chunk of our time. And if I could just do this in 5 minutes and grab something, a couple of handouts and walk away and feeling extremely prepared when I get there and not rushed, that's a godsend because I'm really present. I'm in front of the students. They're not feeling that rushness that you typically feel like I need to connect my computer and it's not connecting correctly. And why isn't, all of that technology issue goes right out the window. You no longer have it. And that in itself is so freeing.
I agree with that because even yesterday I did one and I brought for the challenge mindset, I brought the
Mhm.
PowerPoint, but I was also like, if it doesn't work, not a big deal
Yeah.
because I know what we need to cover and we could just not use the PowerPoint. That's not a
Mhm.
problem. And it was very freeing and I just felt I was very excited and I read the students' feedback after they completed the survey and I could tell they felt my excitement. I didn't have to worry
Yeah.
about the technology. I was walking around the classroom with them, helping them with the workshop piece. They were walking around because we did the challenge mindset. It was just a really good experience. And I left just exhilarated, but also by the end of the day, I was exhausted. You know, you ride that high and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I need a nap. That was
Yeah.
awesome. So moving forward, what are some final takeaways or suggestions you would give someone thinking about doing this?
Just try it. Just, it's almost like ripping the Band-Aid off and just saying, okay, I'm going to do this and not even bring my laptop and go full force. No, like you said, oh, but I really want them to do a QR code so they could send that to them, find their emails and just send them the QR code, the direct link, and not worry about it. So stop worrying about the technology component, but really focus on the conversation piece. And it is very scary. The first time I know I talked to you afterwards, and you're just like, wow, I was like nervous going in, but I was excited at the same time. And you're going to have those nerves. I had them too when I first did it. And one of my biggest fears was, am I going to have enough stuff to fill in the time? Or am I going to not be able to limit it? And we're going to run over time. True conversations limit itself. And so you don't have to worry about that. And if you do have more time, just let them do more activities and to reiterate what they're learning. And so it is a win-win situation because you're less stressed yourself. You're able just to be in your own element and you're able to read the room and really focus on what they need and they all of a sudden feel heard and listened to. And that's what students lack the most when you really talk to them. They're like, well, I just feel like I'm shuffled point A to point B. People are just handing me handouts. I'm just so lost. Like I said, we have a lot of first generation students here, and I really want to make sure that they feel like they're welcomed and their concerns are being heard and that we really care about them. And when you do this, it is freeing for you, but it's also very freeing for the student because all of a sudden they're not just watching a PowerPoint. Instead, they're engaging and interacting. And so it's a learn by doing.
I agree with all of that, and I'm a newbie to this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no
I want to
problem.
thank you again, Jody, for figuring this out, for being the pioneer, getting us started, and then the courage to come present. And also, yes, the world ended in 2020, but I'm glad, selfishly, I got to see your roundtable in 2025.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening to it and just wanting to adopt it immediately. And there has been a few others that has jumped full force into it. And then there are other ones I'm just still, people are still emailing me going, I'm on the wall. I'm still questioning if this is something I want to do. And I'm always just like, just try it. The most that you could do is, wow, I need to work on this a little bit more. And the students aren't going to know because we are professionals. We know our topic well enough that we could fill in the blanks. But it is a lot freeing, and you're going to find that it's fun. It actually makes going to a classroom and presenting fun again.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy that we're able to do this podcast and kind of share it out to everybody.
Me too. Thank you for being willing to do this with me.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
This is such a compelling topic. To our listeners, please check out the show notes for this episode. You're going to find links to all of the resources that were mentioned here today. And Allie and Jody, thank you again for being here and sharing your inspiring work and encouraging all of us to work a little differently and maybe without slides. I think it's something we could all experiment with. So thanks again for being here, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.